Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and today I'd like to tell you about a little meeting I went to in London last night, which helped kickstart the push by a lot of MPs, including Labour MPs, to deliver electoral reform. But as you'll see from the document I've linked in the description below, their ambitions stretch beyond just changing the electoral system. It includes a bit of a clear up of various injustices in our politics, with plans to tackle hidden funding and even a bit of media reform. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So I've got good and bad news. Let's get the bad news out of the way first. So I went to that there London. Unfortunately, this is still as I remember it. I thought, well, maybe it's a bit different in the evening compared to Saturdays. No. Too crowded, people on the roads beeping their horns like they do on the telly, but nowhere else in the country. And the toilets were all closed again. I don't know why they have to keep closing them when I visit. Like, what do they think I'm going to do in there? And the underground is, of course, too hot and noisy. Different strokes for different folks, but it would strip away my mental health if I had to actually live in London. Someone there, when they were talking to me and found out how far I'd travelled, said, "Oh, so you'd be stopping over then?" I thought, not a chance. I want to be long gone by the time the werewolves come out. But the meeting itself had a lot of good news. It was the launch for an APPG, which for electoral reform specifically. APPG stands for All Party Parliamentary Group, and it's what happens when MPs, particularly across party lines, go, "Oh, I'm really interested in this thing. Oh, you're interested in this thing as well. We should make a group." So they can do that. MPs can make groups and whatever they like. For example, there was news of the results of a different APPG on gambling yesterday, who after several years have got cross-party support for compulsory levies on the gambling industry in order to fund help for addicts. The Conservatives already agreed to this. Labour are going to now go through with those plans. This APPG, called Fair Elections, has, as of last night, 109 members. That's 109 out of the 650 MPs who think electoral reform is important enough that they've joined a group to put their shoulders behind it. This includes 55 Labour MPs and will hopefully grow in time. The meeting itself had a range of speakers from different parties, mostly MPs, that is the point. I noticed that nobody was there from Reform UK, even though they say they're interested in changing the electoral system. Perhaps it's because they're less keen on the moves to tackle dodgy funding and dodgy media. There was a speaker from the Conservative Party, but as there don't seem to be any Conservative MPs behind the project, as far as I can tell, it was not a Conservative MP, it was a London Assembly member. Still, it was good to hear someone explain what they see as the benefits to the Conservative Party of cleaning up our political system. I keep saying I would like to see Conservative politicians talking about joining the EU, but at least there are some getting behind two of the most important political reforms I think the country needs. And during the various speeches, and they were recorded, so they'll pop up online over the next few days, I think, but without necessarily remembering who exactly said what, the issue of the electoral reform that never was under the last Labour government, because they'd promised it. The biggest failure of the last Labour government was not delivering proportional representation, because an awful lot of the crap that's happened since couldn't have happened. But anyway, this subject was brought up. But also the belief that lessons have actually been learned this time. There was certainly optimism on the part of those MPs speaking. But I think for me, the most interesting thing that was said was not by an MP, but by the former First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford. Now, on the subject of stability, because opponents keep saying that first past the post delivers stable government and proportional representation unstable ones, which is an obvious nonsense, especially in the context of British elections. The most stable parliament we've had in 2 decades was the coalition between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. And that was a result which could easily have emerged from a PR system. Every other parliament, going back nearly 20 years, has produced at least one change of Prime Minister partway through. Stable my arse. But Drakeford was pointing out that in Wales, just as in 2 other nations of the UK, there have been non-first past the post elections for a quarter of a century now. And in all that time, he said Labour have always been the government in Wales, and yet they have never had a majority. And although the party running the government has changed in Scotland, you can also say the same of the Scottish government. That's been very stable as well. But Drakeford made a really good point that I must confess I'd never considered before. He said that having to work with other parties is not a weakness but a strength. Now, I agree with that, but he added some interesting context. He said, because you are obliged to work with others, first of all, there would be a published list of policy objectives, which lets the public also know what's going on. But more than that, that he had to consult others about policies before going public with them. Now, this is a real strength, because let's look at shall we say a parallel topic here. So the new Labour government. Now, they've done a lot of good, and a lot of the legislation being passed are very promising. And yet, they're being put through the meat grinder because largely of three policies which were very poorly conceived. The winter fuel allowance, the bus fare cap, and the inheritance tax for farmers. It's not the policies themselves as such, but the way they were, the specific way they were implemented, which was politically naive. And Labour are paying the price. And how did these policies ever see the light of day in their current form? Because of groupthink. All the people involved all think in the same way. They may think they come from diverse backgrounds, but they all think the same way. There are no objectionable Yorkshiremen pointing the idiocy in them. And so they get announced to the public. A small number of them become so unpopular that it overshadows all the good stuff. And then the government are left trying to work out which is the least bad option, U-turning or doubling down in the hope that it sort of blows over before the next election, because their pride's under threat, you know. But if you have at least two parties working together who are needed to get any legislation through, so they have to then discuss those policies behind closed doors before they're unleashed upon the public. And you will definitely have at least two different perspectives on the situation. Even if each party individually keeps hiring Oxford PPE graduates to advise them instead of Yorkshire gobshites, they will still have some critical discussions taking place because they have a different philosophy, slightly different philosophy to each other at least, making the chances of a hideous cock-up much less likely. In terms of what this group is going to do, it's set out in a document, which I will link in the description below. They have three recommendations. The first concerns the electoral reform itself. They want to set up a commission, a public consultation with experts in order to come to a national consensus on which system should replace first past the post. This is entirely in line with Labour's official position, by the way, which is that first past the post creates distrust and alienation in politics. That is their words. But that any proposed change to the voting system must not be dictated by political leaders. Now, just to be clear, because I saw a report in The Guardian on this yesterday, and it was talking about Labour are officially committed to proportional representation. That is not true. They're basing that on the fact that a couple of conferences in the last Parliament, one in the end, overwhelmingly voted for proportional representation. That doesn't commit Labour to anything. However, their own National Policy Forum did make the statement I've just described. So officially, it's not officially the position that Labour is committed to proportional representation, but it is committed to getting rid of first past the post, unless, of course, they want to say that they're okay with things that breed distrust and alienation in politics, which I don't think they are. So yeah, entirely in line with Labour's official line on the matter. The second recommendation is to strengthen the Electoral Commission, which was weakened in the last Parliament, and close dodgy donation loopholes. There are examples in the document of, despite the rules, how easy it is for anyone to fund UK politics because it's so easy to hide the identities of the donors. Vladimir Putin wants to donate to a political party. He can do that, no problem at all. And the third recommendation concerns disinformation. Not quite the full fat media reform I think we need, but it's a step, and as the Chinese say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It would call on various media outlets to risk assess legal but harmful content in the same way they do for illegal content. The government are known to be looking at the Online Safety Act for improvements anyway, so this would sit comfortably with that. Though I would still like to see more of a duty of accuracy on journalists and editors across all types of news and current affairs media as well. So what can we do to help all this? Well, as I've said before, get as involved as you are able. Some will be able to get involved a lot, some not so much. If you are a Labour member, join the Labour campaign for electoral reform. They will organise pressure from within the Labour Party, and the more members they have, the more power they have. If not, there might be an equivalent if you're a member of a different political party, or there is the non-partisan Make Votes Matter that you can join. I noticed Dale Vince was in the room, so it may well get a bit of funding as well. But you can also help out there as well if you are able. If not, then you could perhaps still help by discussing the issues with people you know, family, friends, colleagues. Read the document, use it to arm yourself. In fact, the major barrier for me is public engagement. Like, you know, the usual polling showing, oh, a clear majority of the public want all this. That was bandied about last night. But every time someone says it, in my mind, I just go, yeah, but what about the saliency? What about the saliency? It's all right showing that the public want a thing. How much do they want it? Like, you know, you could do a poll on whether people think you should have watercress in egg sandwiches, and you may well get a clear view one way or the other. Doesn't mean people want their MPs to do anything about it. You know, do the public want it enough to email their MP about it? Do they want it enough to factor it into their voting habits? Political leaders who understand data know there's a difference between a policy that the public wants and a policy that the public demands. So anything we can do to make the public see this move as not just good, but important and urgent will help it become a reality. This APPG already has 1 in 6 of all MPs signed up. That's a lot. But it would be even better if you could persuade your MP to sign up too if they're not already. You could ask them if they are, and if not, why not? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.